Good morning, my name is Professor Vikas Sharma from Mahatma Gandhi Nursing College, and today we are going to discuss about the chapter sampling. Now, as we all know that sampling is an integral part of nursing research and statistics, where if sampling is not done correctly, the whole result of the research will be inappropriate and the whole resources used in research project will be wasted. So before proceeding to the main part of sampling, we need to understand what are the basic terminologies used in sampling. So the first terminology which is used very frequently in this chapter is population. So we need to understand this first of all. A population is a complete set of persons or objects that possess some common characteristics of interest to the researcher. So we can say that there are group of objects, people or situations which we will use in conducting research, but that must have common characteristics which the researcher is interested in. The population is composed of two groups, the target population and the accessible population. So we will discuss about both the types of population one by one. So the first of them is target population. Target population is the aggregate of cases about which researcher would like to make generalization. So we can easily understand what is target population. It is the type of population on which the result of the study will be generalized. When the researcher does any study on the samples, and the result of that particular research will be generalized on the target population. So it is the aggregate of cases on which the result of the study will be generalized. So it consists of people or things that meet the designated set of criteria of interest to the researcher. An example we can see here, they might be all people who are institutionalized for psychiatric problems in one state, or all the charts from Well Child Clinic for the year 2010. Now another aspect of this is accessible population. The accessible population is the aggregate of cases that conform to the designated criteria and that are accessible as a pool of subjects for a study. So there are two interrelated aspects in this. The first one is it is the aggregate of cases that act according to the designated criteria, and another aspect is these are accessible as a pool of subjects for a study. Means these are those objects or people who are easily available and accessible for the researcher. Now researcher usually sample from an accessible population and hope to generalize to a target population. This is a very good idea to understand the difference between target population and accessible population. As you can see here, the difference is given. Researchers usually sample, so from the accessible population only, researcher usually select the sample, and after conducting study on those samples, researcher hope to generalize the result of that particular study on the target population. Now samples and sampling. So what is sampling? Sampling is the process of selecting a portion of population to represent the entire population. So it is definitely selecting a portion of population that will represent the entire population. And what is sample? So sample is nothing but a subset of population elements. So the entire population is being divided into different subsets, and they are known as sample. An element is the most basic unit about which information is collected. So element is the most basic unit of the population about which each and every information would be collected, and that would be used as a data, and that data will be used to analyze the result of the study. In nursing research, the elements are usually humans. So as you belong to the nursing profession, we will talk about nursing research. So in nursing research, almost all the elements are usually humans in most of the research studies. Now the next important terminology is sampling frame. So it is just a list of all the elements which we have already discussed, that elements are just a subset of population. So list of all the elements or subjects in the population from which the sample is drawn. So what actually happens is, researcher cannot directly find out all the samples. So what he does is, he goes to his research area and he either finds out the list of all the elements from any of the organization, or he has to prepare that list of elements, that is known as sampling frame. So how it is done? A sampling frame could be prepared by researcher, or an existing frame may be used. As we have already discussed, there are two ways. Either researcher has to prepare himself a list of elements, or he has to get it from any of the organization. For example, you can see one example is given here. A researcher may prepare a list of all the households of a locality which have pregnant women, or may use a register of pregnant women for antenatal care available to him. Sampling error. So what is sampling error? There may be fluctuation in the values of statistics of characteristics from one sample to another. So if there are any fluctuation of statistics in the characteristics of samples, then there could be chances of sampling error. Sampling bias. These are distortion that arises when a sample is not representative of the population from which it was drawn. So a researcher has to take care about this, that whenever they select the sample, they must consider the fact that they must be the representative of the entire population. If it is not so, then there are chances of sampling bias. Then the next terminology is representative sample. We all know the fact that all the samples selected for the study must be representative sample. If it is not, then there would be distortion in the result of the research studies. So representative sample is one whose key characteristics closely approximate those of the population. So representative samples are those whose characteristics must be very close to the most common characteristics of the population, or the characteristic in which the researcher is interested about the population. So we can understand by one example. If the population in a study of blood donors is 50% male and 50% female, then a representative sample would have a similar gender distribution. So a very simple example is given here. If the total population is divided among 50% of male and 50% of female, then a representative sample must have the similar dividation. Means if the representative samples, suppose if the samples are only 100, then 50 of them should be male and 50 of them should be female. If the sample is not representative of the population, the external validity, that is also known as generalizability of the study, is at risk. So we can understand by this fact that if the sample will not be the representative of the entire population, then it would be difficult to generalize the result of that study on the entire population. Okay, thank you. Thank you.